Hello, everyone. I'm Winnie Lam. It is my absolute honor to welcome Laura Arrillaga-Andreessen to Google today, who's going to talk to us about her new book, Giving 2.0. Laura is the founder and chairman of the Stanford Center on Philanthropy and Civil Society. She's also founder, former chairman, and chairman emeritus at the Silicon Valley Social Venture Fund. She teaches philanthropy at Stanford University and at the Graduate School of Business. It is my absolute honor to welcome her to Google today to talk about her new book. So without further ado, please give a really warm welcome to Laura Arrillaga-Andreessen.
Thank you, Winnie. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you all so much for taking the time out of your chaotic schedules to join us here today. As I was prepping for this event, I went on to the Google Authors site and was watching many of the different presentations. Extraordinary politicians, extraordinary business leaders, extraordinary academics, extraordinary philanthropists, and there was one session that I watched in particular that I wanted to draw attention to because I think there's so many similarities between me and this individual who is, of course, it goes without saying, Lady Gaga. We have so much in common. As you can see, both of our maiden names end with Aga, which is important. If you Google Lady Gaga, there are about almost 500 million search results. And if you Google Laura Arrillaga-Andreessen, there are almost 500 million less search results. Additionally, we both wore black mini dresses to our Google Talks, which I think is very important. And additionally, Lady Gaga was selected as one of Time's most influential people in the world, and I read that issue. But on a serious note, the one thing that Lady Gaga and I do have in common is that we both have philanthropic foundations, and we are both fiercely committed to access to opportunity and equality for all. And that is really the core purpose of the work that I'm doing in philanthropy and my inspiration for creating Giving 2.0. In each of our lives, we have these moments, whether it is a disturbing article that we read in a magazine about the state of public education here in this country, whether it is a personal experience we've had, perhaps having access to knowledge through a public library as a child, or, well, I guess that was true for my generation, but perhaps not true for the generation of every single person in this room, or being the beneficiary of somebody else's generosity, like through a college scholarship, or it could be something that we learn about in the world that horrifies us, that upsets us, such as famine or abuses to women and children in a particular country, or simply not having freedom of expression. But each of us has these experiences that inspire us to realize that there is this whole world outside of ourselves. And these experiences inspire us to want to reprioritize and to want to make a change and to start living in service of others, to give. And for me, my giving story began with my parents. I am extraordinarily blessed to be the daughter of two amazing philanthropists. My father, John Arrillaga Sr., has dedicated easily upwards of half of his time and financial resources over the last 2 decades to his philanthropic work. But in particular, I want to tell you about my late mother, Frances Arrillaga. This is Frances. She was my best friend and my soulmate. She was filled with a radiant grace and generosity, and she expressed her generosity in how she chose to live her life every day. During the last 2 decades of her life, she sat on dozens of nonprofit boards. She co-founded 2 nonprofits. She ran our family foundation, but most importantly, she was an extraordinary community volunteer. She is my role model. It's probably not surprising that this woman birthed a daughter who also shares the giving gene, along with, as you can see from this photo, a lifelong love of wearing mini dresses, starting at age 2, critically important. But it was the giving gene that she gave me that was activated at a very specific time in my life. It happened in 1993. I just graduated from Stanford. I was working at a really exciting high-tech company here in the Valley that unfortunately was not Google. And I had just been accepted to Stanford Graduate School of Business. All of my dreams were coming true. 3 weeks later, we found out that my mother had cancer. That day, I quit my job and I deferred business school and I stayed at home and became her primary caregiver. And this was a journey that led me for the 20 months during her illness prior to her passing to understand for the very first time what human suffering was, and to live for the very first time completely in service of another human being. And that was the most profound, meaningful experience of my life. And I realized during this time of essentially becoming a mother to my own mother in her time of greatest need, that the very purpose for my life was to live in service of others. And ultimately, ideally, was to help other people understand ways of giving that can be deeply meaningful, not only to the organizations and people that each of us aspires to help, but also deeply meaningful to ourselves. So, how many people here in this room find giving deeply meaningful? How many people find that giving makes you happy? If giving makes you happy, clap your hands. Clap your hands. Thank you so much. Happy holidays, and I'll be signing books in the back. Okay, so every single person in this room is a giver. Not only is a giver, but you give joyfully. How many people in this room self-identify as a philanthropist? Raise your hand. Okay, so only a handful of people in this room self-identify as philanthropists, yet every single person in this room gives. That's an interesting disparity. And I think I know why that is the case. Because you might feel like self-identifying as a philanthropist is too self-promotional, or you do not fit the mold, or you do not have enough money to consider yourself a philanthropist. For me, I believe the very idea of what a philanthropist is ripe to be democratized. Philanthropy actually derives from the Greek word philanthropos, which means love for humankind. There is no mention of money in this definition. The only thing that you need to have to be a philanthropist is generosity. The only thing you need to have. I believe that a philanthropist is anyone who gives anything. Time, money, experience, skills, networks, passion, compassion, in any amount to create a better world. In the 21st century, this definition is a redefinition of this word. It's a departure from what we've traditionally thought about as a philanthropist. In the 21st century, there's actually an enormous spectrum of what a philanthropist is. If you volunteer at hospice, you are a philanthropist. If you write a fundraising campaign or an awareness building campaign on Facebook, Google+, you are a philanthropist. If you walk for a cure, if you donate even $10 to provide vaccines for children in developing countries, or if you have the opportunity to donate $1 million to your alma mater, you are a philanthropist. What is so important to remember about the philanthropic spectrum is that there is no financial hierarchy. There is no financial hierarchy. If a gift is significant to you, whatever form and whatever size it takes, it will be significant to somebody else. Democratizing philanthropy, I believe, is a critical need, both for our society and for our world. I want to call out specifically, though, the power of the individual giver, the power of individuals like every single person in this room within the broader context of the philanthropic sector. This is a pie chart. Okay, that was really funny. I've been gearing up for this one slide for like 3 weeks. Come on, people. I need you on my team here. This is actually a pie that I made for Thanksgiving this year, which is actually a lie because my beloved has actually banned me from the use of both the oven and the gas stove at home due to several kitchen fires that may or may not have been instigated by myself. Consequently, I've developed extremely advanced microwaving skills, but that being neither here nor there, I digress. Last year, US philanthropy totaled in excess of $290 billion. And you were probably going to be a little bit surprised to hear that individuals made up over 80% of this giving. It's not the major foundations and it's not corporations who drive American philanthropy. It's individuals like each one of you. Last year, in fact, 3 out of 4 American households made a philanthropic gift. And when we look at who in fact is giving and how much they are giving, it is actually the people who have the very least to give who are giving the very most. Additionally, last year, almost 63 million Americans volunteered their time. Yes?
Is that the percentage of their income that they give, or is that the percentage of that category that gives?
This is the percentage of income that on average each give. 63 million Americans volunteered their time. I need to get back to you on that, but thank you for that question. 63 million Americans volunteered their time. Those efforts totaled in excess of 8.1 billion hours. If you value each of those hours, what is probably a grossly low $20 per hour, that totals almost $170 billion in value. You can see from this data that it is, in fact, ordinary Americans with extraordinary generosity who are driving American philanthropy. Philanthropy here in this country is actually about the 99%, not the 1%, which are typically the people that we read about. That being said, giving it a time right now may seem like an economic paradox. It's a time where in any given state, unemployment is wavering between 8.5 and 13%. Now more than ever, we need to do more with less. Let me show you why. Globally, 2.6 billion people are living on less than $2 a day. $2 is less than the price of a loaf of bread at Safeway. 2.6 billion people globally do not have access to basic sanitation. And 1.1 billion people entered the 21st century unable to read or write their own names. Here in this country, nationally, 1 in 6 Americans is living in poverty. And poverty is being defined at just over $22,000 a year for a family of 4. That's about the same cost as a low-end Prius. Additionally, every 26 seconds, a high school student drops out of high school here in this country. So during the course of our hour together, about 125 students will drop out of high school. High school dropouts in this country are 8 times more likely to go to prison, and they are not eligible for 90% of jobs. Locally here in California, 1 in 4 children live in poverty. 1 in 4 children. And 1.2 million students dropped out of school in the last year. And right up the road, about 5 minutes up the road in East Palo Alto, only 18% of people over the age of 25 have a high school diploma. These are horrifying realities. And what's equally horrifying is the fact that we are not solving these social problems with the way that we have been giving to date. We have to start giving in a way that matters more. A recent study in summer of 2010 estimated that 65% of all gifts by individuals were based purely on emotion. They had no research behind them. When a gift is based purely on emotion, you ultimately have probably no understanding of the impact that that gift has. You have no understanding of the meaning of your gift in the organizations that you are trying to support and in the lives that you are ultimately trying to touch. Which gift would be more meaningful to you? If you were giving $1,000, would it be more meaningful for you to give that gift to end poverty? Or would it be more meaningful for you to know that because of your gift of $1,000, 10 unemployed veterans were able to participate in a job training with the ultimate goal that 7 out of those 10 had a new job within 6 months? I want you to take 5 seconds and just close your eyes or look down and think about what gifts you've given, whether it's your time or your influence or your dollars. Which gifts have you given have been most meaningful to you? Just think about it for a second. My guess is that the ones that are most meaningful to you are ones where you did understand the meaning that your gift has, and where you didn't just give your dollars, but you rather engaged all of your resources. you gave your passion, you gave your time, you gave your influence as well. You gave your portfolio of resources to that specific cause. So my question, my daily question to myself and my question today to all of you is, why wouldn't we put the same amount of time and effort and thought behind every single social investment that we make as we do behind every single for-profit investment that we make? The problem that we have is that Americans give a huge amount of time and money every year, but we are not giving to our fullest potential. We are giving largely based on emotion and passion, when in reality we need to marry our hearts with our minds. We need to choose the issues that drive our philanthropy based on our passion, but we need to choose the organizations that we fund based on our intellect. So how do we actualize our philanthropic potential? How do we, as I like to say, get from 1.0 to 2.0? Let me suggest a basic roadmap for you. First and foremost, we need to shift our giving from reactive to proactive. So what does reactive giving look like? Reactive giving is when it's the holiday season and on our kitchen counters at home, we have dozens of mail solicitations from very worthy nonprofit organizations which we may or may not know anything about. And we make our giving decisions based on those mail solicitations. Or at the end of the year, when we're looking back at everything that we've given, we realize that over half of our giving was based on what other individuals, what our friends and coworkers asked us to give to, as opposed to our own passion. Reactive giving is something you feel like you should do. Proactive giving is when your giving is based in your particular passion or passions. It's when you invest not just your dollars, but also your time, your influence, your networks, and your expertise. Reactive giving is when you give to causes that move you deeply, and that's what enables you to engage your intellect, to have the understanding that makes your giving not just something that's momentarily gratifying, but something that contributes to your lifelong happiness. Proactive giving is something that you want to do. And when you want to do something, as we all know, you're much more likely to do much more of it. We need to shift our giving from sympathetic to strategic. Sympathetic giving is when you give based on, for example, a late night television ad that shows a hungry child in need. While your intentions are very much in the right place, you're essentially giving into a vacuum. You have no idea if any of the money that you're giving will ultimately get to the child who inspired you to give in the first place. I would argue that it actually benefits us greatly to extract a bit of the emotion that drives our giving and replace it with a bit of learning and knowledge. When we give strategically, we are actually balancing our personal passions, and we are balancing the pull on our heartstrings and the emotional drive to give with an understanding of core public needs and where our dollars can be most effective. Sympathetic to strategic. And finally, we need to make a shift from isolated to collaborative. Isolated giving is when we do our giving sitting at home, at our desk, writing checks, mailing them off. and that constitutes our philanthropy. Isolated giving is when we give $20 into the collections basket at our place of worship once a week or once a month or once a year. When you give in isolation, you're actually drastically limiting the potential impact of your gift. So we need to shift from isolated to collaborative. When you choose to give collaboratively, you have a whole new world of possibilities, both for the strategic and the personal or social benefit that your giving can have. When you give with other people, you are essentially sharing your passion and you're sharing the experience of expressing your generosity. You're sharing something that makes you happy. When you give collaboratively, you also have the potential to benefit from each other's knowledge and learning. So I encourage everyone to consider coming together in a giving circle, formally or informally, with members of your family, close friends, members of your place of worship, co-workers, and do research together about something you share passion for together. Call in local experts and understand what are the most critical needs in your particular issue area, and then make your giving decisions collaboratively. Reactive to proactive, sympathetic to strategic, and isolated to collaborative. Giving 1.0 to giving 2.0. So let me bring these core tenets to life with a few examples. This is a tax return, like the ones that were prepared with love and joy for free, that helped low-income families save more money for back-to-school clothes for their kids and healthier meals on the table. These tax returns are like the ones prepared by Hector Chow. Hector is a retiree who lives on his pension in Western Los Angeles. Hector does not have financial resources to give, but what he does have to give are his time and his expertise. Hector was a tax accountant for 20 years. Hector volunteers with the AARP's tax aid program, which every year harnesses the time and expertise of over 30,000 volunteers, and together they prepare tax returns, free tax returns, for about 2.6 million families. At an average tax return prep cost of $229, that totals about $600 million in value. So Hector's time and expertise translates directly into money saved for low-income families. Hector Chow is a philanthropist. This is a laptop like the ones that were used to provide computer training for a young girl in Guatemala who, through this computer training, suddenly had access to knowledge from all around the world, which she can use to pursue her lifelong dream of becoming a teacher. This computer training was provided with a $40 gift by a young professional in Seattle, Washington named Seema Bende. Seema is passionate about global poverty and education. Seema is building on generations of volunteerism and social justice work of her parents and her grandparents in her native country of India. Seema selected this gift, which she made through a funding intermediary called the Joe Kona Foundation, because of the role that computer training played in the development of her own career. Seema guides her giving by strategy, not sympathy. Seema is a philanthropist. This is a soccer ball, like the ones that are used to teach a group of East San Jose girls a new sport, and in turn a new confidence in themselves, which helps them thrive both in school and in life. And across the field, their mothers are learning exercise in a simultaneous program. They're also learning about nutrition and how to cook healthier meals for their children. Through this program, through the Bay Area Women's Sports Network, an entire family's well-being is improved. And this nonprofit is funded through a giving collaborative that includes Jun and Kimberly Bakar. Jun and Kimberly, a married couple who met in medical school, are partners at SV2, the Silicon Valley Social Venture Fund. They are passionate both about women's rights, but also about philanthropic innovation. So they choose to give not only their expertise and their time, but also their resources to give collaboratively through SV2, and in turn are part of a larger portfolio of 35 early stage innovative nonprofits. And through their collaborative giving, these nonprofits are able to ultimately touch many more lives. These stories teach us, I believe, a powerful lesson about how philanthropy is being democratized. There are countless opportunities now for us as individuals to have tangible, meaningful impact with all of our gifts. Again, whatever their size and whatever their form. So what can you do, and what can you do right now? What can you do when you go back to your desks and you pretend that you're working when in reality you really want to be completing all of your holiday shopping online? Sitting here in Silicon Valley, you are at the epicenter of technology and technological innovation. In my mind, this is the most exciting place to be in the world, primarily because of how technology is democratizing things. Technology democratizes entire nation states, as you know, but what I find most beautiful about technology is how it's democratizing philanthropy. Four of countless ways that it's doing this. Number one, technology is providing access to information. Any individual who wants to be a philanthropist can now go online and have access to the funding portfolios and due diligence of many of the most highly staffed, professionalized philanthropic foundations in the world. This is like having direct access into super high performance money manager portfolios. This access to information gives us the power to shift from not just being charitable, but being strategic philanthropists. Technology also gives us access to unique giving opportunities. Technology connects individuals across states, across countries, across oceans with unique giving opportunities and an understanding of how your gift is directly impacting somebody else's life in another part of the world. So a lawyer in Kansas City or an engineer here at Google could be directly connected and make a gift to fund a young girl's education in Afghanistan, or make a $200 gift to provide a prosthetic limb for a manual laborer in Bangladesh. Access to unique giving opportunities. Through social networks, individuals are now able to self-identify by the organizations and issues that we are most passionate about. And with 5 or 10 minutes of your time, you can create a fundraising campaign or an awareness building campaign or an entire movement, and with the click of a mouse, send it out to your entire social networks. Powerful. And technology also provides us access to problem solving. Now, through creative swarms and crowdsourcing, individuals who are otherwise completely disconnected can collaborate online to solve some of our world's most pressing social problems, like famine in East Africa. These are just 4 simple examples of an entire world of opportunity that technology is creating for social change. It's extraordinary to me that what's happening right now at this moment is creating an entire new platform that has potential to in turn create an entire new culture for the philanthropic sector, a culture of innovation. And in my mind, it is the individual donors who, as we saw earlier, make up upwards of 80% of all giving, who have the responsibility to drive this new culture of innovation. The onus is on us to innovate in our philanthropy. Every single person in this room has the potential and has the intellect and the resources to be innovative in your giving. And it's innovation, I believe, this incessant learning and evolution, which is what will ultimately drive each of us reaching our own philanthropic potential. When I think of innovation, I think of 3 different things: the creation of something new, the renewal of something that already exists, and new thinking around existing processes and systems and problems. The creation of something new. For example, peer-to-peer giving sites like the Joel Kona Foundation and Donors Choose didn't even exist 10 or 11 years ago. Donors Choose was created by a former teacher. Joel Kona Foundation was created by a former Microsoft programmer. Donors Choose in the last decade has channeled over $100 million directly into core needs in public education classrooms around the country. Oops, wait, we didn't mean to do that slide quite so quickly. The suspense is killing you, I know. The renewal of something that already exists. For us as individual givers, we are constantly coming together in groups. Whether it's a religious studies group, or it's a work group, or you're part of a book club, or an investment club. You have these built-in micro-social networks that you can expand to help improve your philanthropy. You can take any of these clubs, any regular gathering that you have with your friends or other members of your social network, and you can create a philanthropic element to this group that already exists. On my website at www.giving2.com, starting in January, I will be providing free agendas and resources to help you take any group and have a giving club component to it for 2012. And new thinking around existing problems and systems and processes. I challenge everyone in this room, myself included, to make a New Year's resolution that you're going to approach your philanthropic giving with the same degree of seriousness as you do your for-profit investments. With philanthropy, individual lives are at stake. So why wouldn't we require an expected return for every single investment that we make in other people's lives and in our broader society? These are just 3 types of ways that we innovate, probably things that you do on a regular basis in your own careers. So these are things that are very familiar to you. But what's important when we go back to thinking about the role of the individual giver, individual givers, yourselves included, gave $235 billion last year. Imagine the potential of those dollars coupled with volunteer efforts if we applied innovation to our giving. So, what is your Giving 2.0 going to be? I believe that what it is we do for other people during the course of our lifetime ultimately defines who we are as people. What's amazing is that every single one of us has the ability to write the chapter of our lives that is our giving legacy from start to finish. There are so many things in our lives that we cannot control. I cannot control the fact that I lost my mother to cancer. But what I can control is how I choose to celebrate her legacy through my giving. Giving is one of the few things in your lives that you can completely control. You get to make every single decision yourself. Every person here has the potential to be an extraordinary philanthropist. But what you choose to do with that potential is ultimately up to each of you. So as you go forth and you be philanthropic, I encourage you to always remember that it's not about what you give, but rather it's about how you give. Thank you. Yay, lunchtime.
We do have a mic if you have any questions for Laura.
Thank you so much for the presentation. That was wonderful. You talked a lot about accountable giving and knowing where your dollars are going. I'd be curious if you could provide some comments on indices or benchmarks or the types of metrics people are able to look at when really knowing where their dollars are going.
It's a fantastic question, and a question that every single person I know in the philanthropic sector, myself included, struggles with every single day. One of the trickiest parts about metrics for giving is the fact that it is virtually impossible to create generalized metrics even across social issue areas, because every nonprofit organization has a unique model. What I can say is that for you as an individual philanthropist, if you've seen one nonprofit, you've seen one nonprofit, and that is it. So every nonprofit you will need to do research on yourself. There are lots of different online assessment tools that are assessment organizations that have been created. There's GuideStar, Great Nonprofits, Philanthropedia, GiveWell, just to name a few. I would encourage you, though, for every nonprofit that you're making a gift, if that gift is significant to you, I would go and read their annual report, or even better, read their 990 report, so you can see exactly how their finances are breaking down. Anybody who claims that having minimal overhead is a sign of an effectively run nonprofit, I believe does not know what they're talking about. There are grassroots advocacy organizations that are going to have upwards of 80% of overhead, and that's going to be fine for that particular model. Then there are major endowed institutions who technically are not going to have any expenses every year that they have to raise through overhead line items. Again, it's totally specific. I think specific to the nonprofit. I think that if an organization cannot tell you specifically what success looks like in the short term, in the intermediate term, and in the long term, that is how they know if they're achieving their mission, then I would not invest in that organization. You should be able to easily answer the 3 following questions. How many, how deeply, how much? So how many people are being touched? How deeply are they being touched by a specific dollar amount? That is, how holistic is the approach of this particular nonprofit? And how much does it cost them to serve each individual life that they aspire to transform? And finally, I think that just as leadership plays a critically important role, actually 2 final points. Just as leadership plays a critically important role in the for-profit sector, the same is absolutely true of nonprofits. So I invest in some nonprofits who have extraordinary leaders, even when their particular mission and issue area is totally outside of my area of passion. And then also, I think it's so critically important that every nonprofit involves their ultimate customer, that is the people who benefit from the services, in the creation of whatever their service model is. So involving the customers in the products. Winnie was just telling me that Google's holiday gift to all the employees was the new phone that you guys have, which my beloved actually got on Friday and is incredibly excited about. But what's so cool about that strategic corporate gift is Google now has the feedback loop of individuals who would be in their customer base in terms of what features work well, what isn't working well, what's appealing, what isn't appealing, what's useless, what's useful. The same needs to be true of how nonprofits create their products. That was a very short answer to that simple question. Yes, thank you.
About how you feel disaster relief efforts fit into this strategic planning about how you want to give and where to give to in times of disaster?
Yeah, in general. You're speaking in general.
Well, yeah,
yes.
in general, but in the past few years, there have just been so many, and it feels like you're inundated with pleas to give to different regions of the world who all equally have an urgent requirement. It's very hard to understand where you make the most impact.
Thank you. So I believe I read about a week ago in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal that last year alone, natural disasters and catastrophes totaled about 300, it's either 300, and I know this is a huge difference, or 390, Zach, do you remember? $1 billion in damage, which is obviously in excess of all philanthropic dollars that were given in the United States. I think it's really important when you're approaching philanthropy that you think of it in terms of a portfolio. And I think the most significant amount of that portfolio should be driven by your personal passion. That being said, I also think it's really valuable to have a friends fund where you allocate a certain percentage of what you're going to give every year to what friends and coworkers, etc., want you to share with them. But I also think it's important, if emergency services and disaster relief is not your personal passion, I think it's important to allow for space in your giving portfolio for those needs, because the reality is when a natural disaster happens, or when a man-made disaster happens, or when an individual is attacked, or a woman is raped, or a house burns down, that is the greatest equalizer in our world. Like, it does not matter who you are, where you work, what education you have. we are all equal in that situation. And I personally believe that emergency services and disaster relief is a critical component of what we all should be doing. It's actually the primary issue area that my beloved and I fund with our philanthropy, primarily because it's the single most underfunded area in medicine, in institutional medicine. But I always encourage everyone to participate, but do so only through pre-vetted institutions. So if you choose to give to the Red Cross, do so with full awareness of the fact that the Red Cross, when it's raising money for any given disaster, will be keeping a portion of that money so that it has immediate funds that can get right into the hands of the people that need them the most when the next disaster happens. Another great way to meet core community needs and critical needs through a very secure, pre-vetted type of organization is giving through local community foundations. So when Hurricane Katrina happened, or you know, when 9/11 happened, it was the United Way of New York City and the New York Community Trust that came together and created the September 11th Fund. And that ultimately was was probably the most successful effort that met not only short-term but also immediate-term needs for that particular crisis, and did so in a way that broadly defined who the victims were.
Hi, thanks so much for being here. My question is about the idea of program funding versus unrestricted funding. And I know nowadays, you know, obviously program funding is really sexy. Everyone wants to give to programs because you can see your direct impact, you can see the people that you're helping, you're buying supplies, blankets, whatever. But that the reality of many nonprofits is that the kind of funding they really need is unrestricted funding for their general operating budget. What kind of advice do you give to donors to get them to understand the importance of that?
That's one of my
versus
very favorite topics. One of my personal goals is to make general operating grants even sexier than program grants, because program funds are the single easiest funds for any nonprofit to raise, primarily because if you do a bit of research, you can connect directly with a teen, a troubled, at-risk youth who you're helping to get an education, or a family that you're helping through providing transitional housing to, or a specific number of individuals who are getting treatment for a particular disease. But in reality, none of those programs would even exist if organizations did not have the general operating funds that provides the core infrastructure for all of their service provision. At SV2, the Silicon Valley Social Venture Fund, we actually only give organizational capacity building grants, and we do that primarily because those are the single hardest funds to raise. The only type of grants that my husband and I give through all of our philanthropy, and same with my family's philanthropy, are general operating grants. So I would encourage you to understand the impact that a nonprofit has, but don't impose your personal needs or ego or idea of what the organization needs on that organization. Make an investment in the leadership team and let them allocate those funds.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Sebastian, and I work in a team that actually seeks to provide nonprofits with AdWords advertising. So I'm particularly inspired because, in a way, I see us trying to connect NGOs with those millions of givers out there. So thank you for the talk. It's great to see that you're educating these givers and you're getting much more of them onto giving. What I want to ask, and something that I struggle is in trying to get a more holistic picture of the whole nonprofit sector. So what are the ways that, understanding the different players, the different types of NGOs, umbrella orgs, and you touch upon some of that from a particular angle in your book, but are there any courses out there or here in the area that we can take to keep furthering our understanding of the nonprofit sector?
Oh,
any suggestions?
That's such a fabulous question. You know what I would love to do is, if you want to give me your card, and Winnie, perhaps we can work with you in this. Why don't I and my team, my two former STAR students, Stacy Walder from the business school and Zach D'Angelo from my undergraduate class, why don't you give us a couple weeks and we'll put together like a big bibliography of resources that you can tap into to help further your work.
That'd be amazing.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you very much.
Sure. Thank you all so much.